Hello, and welcome to the Pragmatic Product Chat series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Caligeris for Pragmatic Institute and your host for this episode. We talk about the importance of value a lot on this show, right? Of building products that people really want, right? Because that people value it, it solves a problem. Unfortunately, as today's guest says sometimes, as SaaS leaders, we're so focused on building value that we forget to capture it, right? We treat pricing like an afterthought, something we'll figure out later after we've built the perfect product, after we have more data. But we're just hemorrhaging money every single day. So today's guest is going to help us stop that. Welcome, Marcos Rivera. He has seen this movie play out hundreds of times. He is the guy Vista Equity Partners brought in to fix pricing across their portfolio. He has now runs Pricing IO and has helped companies capture $400 million in additional revenue. He also wrote the book Street Pricing, which I love it because basically he said he wanted to give away all his secrets because he is tired of watching good companies fail over bad pricing. So if you've wondered if you're leaving money on the table or if your pricing is actually driving customer away, this is the conversation for you. Welcome, Marcos.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to start talking about it.
All right. I'm thrilled to have you. First, I always like to start with everyone's origin story, right? And I think this is going to be a great origin story too, because a lot of people on the call or on the show will relate. Tell me how you got where you are and why you are so very, very passionate about pricing.
You know, it's funny because people ask me this a lot, and it's not your standard path. But the funny thing is that most people who end up in pricing don't really have a standard path, is what I found out. They come from all walks of life. I came from a product management background. And so here's the thing. I learned a lot about building good products, listening to customers, figuring out what they want, what they don't want, trying to balance that with what the CEO wants and what doesn't want, and trying to figure it all out, make sure engineering is clear on what they got to do. All that stuff that happens being in the epicenter, that is product management. I learned a lot about the art of listening and sort of aligning things, right? That's kind of what comes with that job. Well, one of the biggest things that really was in our way was the pricing model, right? And here's the funny thing that people forget, right? Is that products don't make you money. It's actually the model that makes you money, right? If you think about it, how you monetize it, how you sell it, how you charge for it, things like that. Lots of great products out there that are totally leaving money on the table. So I wanted to fix this problem. I had a product. It was an old, if you think about dispatching people out there, it was like that type of optimization workflow product. It was being we were seeing plateau in our growth because we were charging by user seats, right? Which was the standard norm. Everybody did it. But here was the funny thing is it makes you more efficient. So we found our customers were reducing their workforce the more they used it. And the more features I put out, the less they used it, we were losing money. I switched the model up to a more of a per transaction model that actually captured the value of every single thing that the product did, made all the difference. We ended up increasing the revenue and wait for it, 100x.
Wow.
100x in less than 3 years. And the reason why was because of the alignment of the model, of some of the enhancements we did. It was all kind of the perfect recipe to increase that. So that catapulted me into the pricing world. Then, like you said, I did it for Vista across 60 companies, all the M&A, all different stages. How do we fix all this pricing and packaging? So doing it over and over again, you kind of get good pattern recognition, right? And then launched off on my own and been loving every minute of it.
I find your first story super interesting, right? That you had a pricing metric that was based on users and you had to shift. And I find it really, really interesting and very relevant to now because I think this is an area where AI is also doing this, right? A lot of AI products are about efficiency. So the classic SaaS model of charging per user, like the better your product is, the less money you're going to make. This is, as you say, it's a bad idea, right? So this conversation, this like need for us to really think about the model and what we're charging for is, I think, even more important than usual because we're changing. So many of us in SaaS use user base. It's so easy. Everyone gets it, but it's not really tied to value you deliver. And it can in fact work quite far against you.
Yeah, and it's the people look at seats, they think of it, it's very safe, but it's very safely, under optimized and very safely will leave a lot of money on the table, right? So the big thing about seats, by the way, I'm not demonizing it. I think there are places where seats can make sense. Slack has done a wonderful job of it. Figma, folks like that have really done a nice job of being strategic and more thoughtful about how they charge for different types of seats and different sort of active criteria behind it. But to, in a lazy approach, step in and just say, I'm just going to charge by the seat and move on without giving it a lot of thought, I think you're gonna put your product growth at risk.
Right. Because what you want to do is have the price metric that is tied to the value you deliver. And if the value isn't directly correlated to number of seats, then that is not your ideal. And like you said, everyone will understand it. No one's going to get confused by it, but it doesn't necessarily optimize the revenue that you've got coming in.
Not at all. And I'll tell you this, when I was a product manager, I thought I was in the hardest freaking job in the world because you have to navigate and you have to pull all these vectors in and sort of keep driving the product forward. But one of the biggest things that I learned, I didn't mention, is how to make trade-offs. The thing about pricing and packaging, it's all about the trade-offs you can make. And that's why some of the most successful products and their pricing models that came from thoughtful product management decisions in there. Things around like, okay, like you said, the value metric, where is it? Where is the value? Well, you're the one freaking building it. So you should be able to help influence where that value is. And how do you capture and measure it? Because not everything can be caught on a usage basis. Think of Netflix, for example, right? If they were to charge me for every single hour of viewing,
that would be broke.
I would change my behavior in a heartbeat. And I like Netflix, right? But you want to be careful not to introduce a metric that is maybe too aligned to value that you're not really responsible for, your product's not responsible for. So you get into this weird attribution game when you start getting overly aligned with the metric. You might have to back off a few degrees, inputs, outputs, things like that. I'm not going to get into the specifics now, but I think a big thought exercise for any product manager, worth their weight, is to think through what are the little bits and units you should be thinking through to either charge for or include and maybe set some type of limit or amount that they need before they're able to graduate to something else.
Or up to, No, that's super interesting. The Netflix thing, you totally made me pause. I never really thought about that. The value does increase, right? With the more hours I watch means I find more shows of interest to me, which, it feels of value. But yet I can't picture like running my card every time I watched an hour, right? That doesn't feel like, because it would punish the behaviors they want, right? So it is an interesting combination of things that I think is really important. And you also brought this up too, because this is one of my like little pet peeves, is too many people in product, in my point of view, feel like they don't own pricing and they can't influence it. They're like, it's not my thing. Finance sets it, or sales sets it, or whoever in their organization they think has the magic pen. But to me, it is so important that whether or not you own it, like we have got to provide really perspective and value to this, because we're the ones who understand the market and the value and those places. And to abdicate that power is just, I don't understand. I don't get it.
It is an age-old problem. I'll tell you this, is that product management tends to have, it could be still a little bit murky, because when you look at 5 different organizations, I'll show you 6 different product management models, right? So the idea behind it is, well, how do I maybe step in and influence pricing a little bit more? So I think you need to influence before you can own. And some organizations can be a little bit apprehensive giving it to product management, mainly because there's so much revenue tied to it. Maybe sales is running the show a little bit. Maybe the CEO is more sales oriented. Maybe marketing is dominant, whatever it is. It's hard for product managers to step in and say, let me own this thing. Here's what you do. And just to give you a quick tip, because I've, as part of my role at Vista, one of my biggest things is, how do we enable a pricing function in the organization? How do we do that? It can come from different places, right? Marketing can come from, RevOps or whatever. But most of the Vista companies have strong product management organizations. And when you have a strong org that listens to the market, that understands the customer, that has a really good pulse on how to drive the product value forward, they make fantastic product and pricing leadership. Here's the thing. The first thing you want to do is that the number one, I would say, door you have to walk through is sales. And the thing is, what you build, product management should be able to define how valuable that is, where it goes in the different tiering structure. Why? Because it makes sense for this use case or this job to be done, and that's why we did it, and they're going to get X more value. If you don't have a good handle on how much value you're building, right? So take that roadmap of all those things and those epics and stories and features and everything you're building out. If you can't quantify it, how is this going to help acquisition, expansion, or retention? You're going to have a hard time influencing pricing, right? You know what may end up happening is that they're going to throw it in for free and you're not going to be able to monetize the new innovation. That's the big trap. So from my perspective, the first thing you walk through is sales, and you basically walk through sales. Here's how this new value-added feature, call it whatever it is going to help you close more deals, or it's going to help you upsell more, or it's going to help you at renewal lift the contract value. Those are the three things salespeople really care about. And if you can connect those things to those outcomes for the salesperson, they're like, hey, this product person is building value to help me sell more. And that's the first step through. The second step through is going to be finance, rev ops, those kind of things, right? So the idea here is, how do you make sure that from a profitability perspective that you're improving the margin profile, or you're improving forecastability of revenue, or things, or predictability of revenue with the pricing and packaging changes, right? So first, you got to make sure that it's meaningful value that can help the seller close. And then second, is it improving our overall margin and position to grow from a revenue perspective? If you pass those two doors, you're going to be much closer to being able to drive and own value. You need to earn it in some cases, product people. I'm just going to say it out loud.
And actually, I don't think you necessarily have to own it, but you need to influence it and be involved in it and understand too the implications of, like, at the end of the day, our products are successful when they drive revenue. And piece of that is, what is the pricing levers that we're using, right? So it's a huge part.
They should be, they at least have a seat at the table, is my point.
And to your point, you get a seat at the table by bringing that type of information and insights that they need to make better pricing decisions.
That's right.
Okay, so I know from reading your bio that you've worked with over 400 SaaS products, so a few here or there. In addition to like pricing metrics, what are some like the most expensive pricing mistakes that you see SaaS companies make repeatedly? Like break your little heart.
Man. I shed a tear every time I see this. So my number one enemy, and I say this in all my content, in my book and everything, my number one enemy is guesswork, right? You put all this time and effort and thought into building something people want to use, and then you freaking go around and guess on the price, right? Or guess on the packaging or whatever it is. And it just breaks my heart, because the pricing model is at the center of this whole thing. It's the ultimate expression of your freaking business strategy, of your model. And then you're just going to throw it to the wind. And when I was getting into pricing away, moving my product mind and expanding it, I was realizing that folks don't wake up in the morning and say, how can I, guess at my pricing model? It was simply because they didn't know, like, what are the levers? How do we do this? And it would seem like it was a black box. And I just didn't know what to freaking do. So whatever the customer says yes to, we're just going to go with that. Here's the thing. The biggest mistakes that I see, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to give you 4 big fat mistakes that I've seen across hundreds of companies. And it drives me crazy every single time. The first mistake is what I call low value framing. Okay. When I say low value framing, this is, standard pitch. Hey, we have this workflow product. You install it, you integrate it, and it's going to help save you time. Okay. Yeah. Products, and specifically software, technology, AI, is supposed to save me time. I don't buy software to spend more time on shit, right? So yeah, that's great. That's the ante. What else do you have? And I think when I push product teams, when I'm doing pricing engagement, when I'm pushing product teams, like, what else do you have? What do you do that pisses off your competitor? What do you do that customers would scream if you stop doing? Like, what are those key things? And let's crystallize those and add that to your value prop. Let's talk about time savings. Like, that's just the opener. And so the low value framing, I think, is really hurting companies. And so sometimes they may come out and wonder, gee, are we overpriced? We're seeing sales kind of flatten. We're not closing as much, or sales cycles are long. Are we overpriced? No, you actually might be under value perception, meaning you might not really frame the value properly. You just spent the last 6 sprints building this damn thing that's going to be phenomenal. And now sales is throwing it in for free. What the hell, right? And so the first one, low value frame, move away. Time savings alone is not enough, right? You got to go further than that. The second big mistake I had to say is lazy segmentation. And here's the thing, small, medium, and large, honestly, Rebecca, is an okay place to start, right? They act a little different, right? They have less money or bigger budgets or whatever. But over time, you're going to find out that they behave differently. They have different needs, different maturity, different complexities they're dealing with, different customer bases they're serving. Like all those things matter. And a product manager understanding their personas, their ICP, and all the key things is really one of the biggest things that they leave on the table is treating certain customers that are so different in what they want and treating them the same because they're in this broad mid-market bucket or this broad enterprise bucket. You got to be super, super careful. So the second thing I would say is move away from just size, product managers, and start factoring in a little bit more around maturity, complexity. What do they need? Why? How complicated is their tech stack? How many customers are they dealing with? Are they in really complicated, highly regulated markets? Like just understanding those dynamics will help you get to better groupings of customers. And that will help you define better solutions for them. Okay. So that's number two is lazy segmentation. I'm going to keep going. Don't, if you stop me, stop me. But the third one, how can I put this? When people do packaging, good, better, best is the most common, right? You got a little package for somebody to come in, and you got something in the middle, then something really high. And that to me is a very common mistake that they assume good, better, best is the package for them just because it's common in the marketplace. Good, better, best works really well when you're attacking a nice broad strip of the TAM. You have very good progressive use cases that build on top of each other, and you're able to define a really nice package that hits their use cases and jobs to be done pretty directly with a nice elevator to the next one over time. Okay. But not all products are like that. Maybe their stage is too early. They only have a handful of features and they have a good, better, best. And I'm like, why is your good and best only one feature apart? Or these are practically the same, only different volumes. Is they're trying to retrofit into good, better, best when it's actually not a good model. Maybe they're better off with 2 plans. Maybe they need 4. Maybe they need something that's a base, and then you need some more modularity on top of it. Like thinking through the structure and not just defaulting to good, better, best, I think is a big mistake that folks should avoid. And challenge yourself into what that journey looks like, how much of the TAM you're biting off, and are these experiences meaningfully different? Because the big key is that you're really pricing the experience, not the product. Right? So you got to make sure they're meaningfully different. The last one, this last one here goes back to what we talked about a minute ago, which is charging for the wrong thing. My Netflix example, right? Charging for the hour of each movie, charging for the user seat. Again, maybe copying a competitor or just taking the easy way out, whatever that may be. Really be thoughtful. And guess what? Big thing I want to really either dispel or make sure people understand is you can charge for more than one thing. Now, you don't want to get too complicated, right, and charge for 15 different things, but you can have like a flat fee or user fee plus maybe you can add a per API charge fee or a per channel fee or a per whatever upload. It doesn't matter. You're able to have multiple axes. You can have 2, sometimes even 3 if they're very clear and easy to understand. But don't get too crazy on that. Don't charge for 5 or 10 different things because then the model gets complicated. But you can add some what I call depth and dimension to what you charge for in order to extract more value in different places while still keeping things simple. Okay. So that's the last thing is don't just take the easy way out. Maybe add 1 or 2 different pricing axes to charge on and use that as a mechanism to capture more value.
All of these I love, right? So the value framing, the segmentation, packaging, the metrics, they're all really important. And I can feel listeners being like, yep, but that's hard, right? Like they don't have the data. Maybe they don't have the systems in there. But I think the other thing to remember is you don't have to do all of it at once, right? Improving any piece of this incrementally has a huge impact. And then that gives you permission and resources and knowledge of which to go further down the list, right? I think people are like, we're so far, it's too hard. I'm just gonna stay here, right? They take the easy way out, as you call it.
Yep. And here's the thing about that, right? So my grandmother always used to say, how do you eat an elephant? Just, one bite at a time, right? It sounds better in Spanish. She's an old Puerto Rican lady. But you get the point, right? Is one bite at a time. And the thing about these four big mistakes is they're the most common. They're not the only ones, but they're the most common. But there are ways to adjust and fix and take these baby steps forward. Like, you don't have to change everything at once. I actually would not recommend changing everything at once. It's kind of hard to tell what's working and what's not when you do that. Here are some of the easy, quick wins for product folks, right? The first one is, I think it's in the packaging area. I think there's usually a quick win, and I say this because I see it in hundreds of different companies, is there's usually some orphan feature hanging out in some plan where it doesn't freaking belong. And you want to maybe pull that thing out and either make it an add-on or apply it into a different plan or something like that. So minor packaging changes, when I said feature here and there, or taking something that's previously unlimited, like unlimited uploads, and using data to support, hey, we should probably put a limit on this thing and charge people who want to, be a power user and do an extreme amount of it. Those are small different changes. If, again, assuming that you have a more modern tech stack, you could step in and make those slight adjustments and even test your way into it. The second thing you always want to make sure is the value framing. Is a lot of it is communication around that, right? So product managers, good ones, are always talking to customers, right? They're always understanding them. And so you could always take that customer interview, Rebecca, and extend out a few extra questions, right? How do you feel in terms of what you're paying in the value you're getting? Which features are really fair to charge for? Which feature would you never, ever pay for? It should just be in the product. What do you think? And just get their overall feedback around that. And just building that muscle within your script is another key one. And take that real customer feedback, because salespeople and CEOs love direct customer feedback, and then use that to enhance the value framing around it. So those are two things that I think are a little bit faster that you can implement and get going. And not have to worry about this big monumental change.
And I really love, we call them najitos. That's what we call our market visits, right? Nothing important happens in the office. Get out of here, right? So I love the idea, and I think it's a minor mindset switch, but it's powerful if you start to use those conversations to explore value and the things that bring them the most value, and what does that impact have, and their pricing feedback, because it's also one of the only times you get to talk about price with a customer outside of a purchase or renewal situation, at which point everybody's got totally different stances on, right? If I'm in the buying cycle or the renewal cycle and you start talking about price, I'm here to get my best price. I've come at it very differently. And if we can fold that into Nihito, then we can get some really interesting feedback that's maybe actually a wider look at it and more authentic, for lack of a better word for that.
Authentic is a great word to use. And I think here's the thing, I want to make sure not to mislead the product people listening here today. Your customers are not going to tell you how to price your product. They don't freaking know. Okay. They understand their pain. They understand what they're doing. They understand what they did before your product. They understand the triggers to buy it, to use it. They understand where they're frustrated, where they're happy. Those are the things you're after, and to really understand. Don't ask your customer to design your pricing model for you, because that's not what they're going to do. But you can really use that input, right? You can ask them different simple questions like, please, tell me what is the most valuable benefit or feature. And great. And what's the big outcome you're after? Oh, you're looking for that outcome. Great. How are we doing on delivering that outcome? Right? What you'll find out is that things that are important to them that you're really delivering on, maybe you're meeting the mark, you're meeting the value promise. Maybe there's some places you're not. Yeah, I thought I was going to increase productivity with this product, but I'm not. Oh, really? Then that opens the door to understand, well, why is it? What's missing? Oh, because blah, 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 blah. You can dig all the way down to this thing is costing me, 15, 20 minutes a day just trying to rejigger this. And you might realize you might have an enhancement. You have to accelerate the priority. You might have to change a feature, or they might be using your product the wrong way and getting less value. Another common thing people forget. And so that's where you want to really dig. It's really a value conversation more than a pricing conversation, but it gives you all the inputs you need to set your pricing up.
Love that. Okay. Most people think about pricing as a revenue play, not a retention play, right? But again, you work with a lot of SaaS products. We have a lot of SaaS customers. Let's talk about pricing strategy and how it can how it influences churn, because we all hate churn.
Okay.
Churn is bad.
I would say this. I think churn is a very loud signal, but it could be very noisy, right? And let me give you a sense around that, right? So when I think of good pricing, I do think of, again, going back to recurring revenue businesses, SaaS, things like that, that your pricing should really influence acquisition, expansion, and retention all the way across, right? It should help you acquire like faster, in a more efficient way. It should help you expand over time, and you should be able to keep your customers around, right? There should be alignment there. And I think that when the customer, going back to churn specifically, if you buy a product, that means that value of the product and the price were pretty well aligned. But something happened over time, and for some reason, the price you pay is up here and the value is down here. And then what that ends up happening is that is a recipe for churn all day long. Okay. What is going on? So you have to understand first your value cycle. What the hell is a value cycle? What does that even mean? Sometimes in a product, you get the value up front. Think of like a compliance training product or something like that, or you get value up front, or security. In other products, there might be cyclical value. Maybe you only get value during high season times. Think of e-commerce and things like that. Also, think of just nicely building linear value over time, right? That's usually more workflow products, things like that tend to build. You get smarter, you use it more, you get value. How does your value changing over time, and how does the pricing model capture that? All right. And that is going to help you influence how much churn is, because ideally in every cycle, what ends up happening is that customers build muscle memory around your product. That's the truth. All right. And no, they don't use all 45 of your features. They use 7, and the 7 that they like, and they use it all the time. And then instead of exploring the right way to do something in your product, they'll kind of, makeshift their way into something and hack a few things together. That's the real way people use products. Okay. As a product manager, my point here is that you have to understand how that behavior changes and make sure that your pricing and packaging doesn't start to overinflate or over-index on certain values that they're not using. Let me give you an example, right? If you are a workflow product and your value is designed in the number of tasks executed in the product, right? That's wonderful. That's great. And they start using the product and executing on the tasks. Over time, they're going to start wondering, okay, well, what else are you going to do for me? I'm still paying you your subscription fee every year. Maybe you're increasing my price with annual increases or whatever. And I'm still using this thing. I use the same 3 features. I execute my tasks. Now what's happening is the value perception starts to erode. Okay. If you're not actively making sure they're using all the features, but the price stays the same. So what ends up happening is that your renewal discussions get uncomfortable, right? Oh man, you're going to raise my price, or I don't know, this other competitor just came out with a product that does 80% of what you do and they're half the price. What are we going to do? Right? This is the big trap that a lot of these bigger companies fall into if they're not watching their overall price mechanism. So the way I would look at it as a product person is that if the value is stagnant, meaning they're only doing one thing in your product and they're doing it over and over again, I would switch to more of a usage-based metric and charge them a little bit more aligned to their usage, and then start using your customer success to try to drive more of that. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you get the "what have you done for me lately" syndrome, and then you have to really justify every single thing you do and charge for. On the flip side, here's the big thing that really drives churn down is the ability to say you're actually not utilizing all the value. You're using 50% of the value. Let me give you a path to use that value. I'll give you a pricing incentive to get there, meaning instead of raising your price 15%, let's only raise it 5%, and then we'll get there and we'll use the value. And that starts to help realign the price to value. Because the big thing I want to make sure every product person here listens to is the value comes before the price, meaning what they should get comes before what they pay. Too many PMs will be excited about a new feature and put it out there and want to charge and monetize it right away. But you have to condition the customer base first about the value. So in many cases, that means promotion. That means a free trial. That could mean a taste, something I call the tease, please, and seize method, right? So tease them a little bit, please them with the product, and then you seize them with an upsell later. And those are the techniques I would say. So don't over monetize and try to monetize too quickly on the new stuff. And then lastly, the biggest thing around churn, believe it or not, is too heavy of an entry point into the product to get the value, what I call path to value.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the big thing. Product loves solving problems. And in some cases, you might put too much in a product package or an offering. Too much means too much change, too much configuration, too much learning, too much ramp up to get to that value. And here's the big secret that most folks forget is that the longer the path is to value, the less of it you can capture. The longer the path to value, the less you can capture. So I would counsel product folks to maybe create a leaner entry point, fewer features. I said it. Yes, dare I say it, smack me on the hand, right? But fewer features. So that way they can get to value, get to an aha moment, and then they can move on and expand from there, right? So those are the big ones that I look at with churn.
It makes a lot of sense when you think about, we all have products that are perfect for experts, right? We may not make them, but we certainly use them, right? I think of the sort of like the Illustrator, Photoshop. If you know it, it does everything you want. And if you're just dabbling, you're like, why is this so hard? Like, why did you do this? But, right. And so again, I can't find the value, right? If I can get to the value, you could add more. Then I might want to upgrade because I've already can do this. And I've just gotten to that point where I wish I could do a little bit more because I'm, and I think we forget to stage them through that process. Because we are experts and forget they're not.
It is. It's that curse of the expert. That's exactly it, right? And so you know so much, and some things you might find obvious are not.
Oh, yes.
And so giving folks those stair steps to work their way in is the better approach. One of the just a cousin or correlate to that is the fallacy that more features is actually better. I find a lot of product folks make this mistake. Is that they will say, well, I want to raise the price. So let me just jam more features into this package and I can raise the price. The board wants me to raise prices. The CEO wants me to raise prices, whatever. Here's the big mistake there is that when people are evaluating their price to value, the problem is software value is really a promise until you actually start using it, right? Going back to my path to value. But here's the thing. If you're only using 10% of the product, and I'm only using these 3 features and I'm not using all these other 35, and you're paying full price though, you feel like, well, I'm only using a tenth of this thing, so shouldn't I be paying a tenth of the price? It is faulty thinking. It is true.
It does, yeah.
Faulty logic.
I don't need all of this, so yes.
Yeah, but that's how humans think, right? And so as long as humans are still buying from other humans, that's what's really going to happen is you have to make sure that you don't overinflate the product. And more features is actually not the way to increase the value. It's actually the more alignment and direct connection to what they want to get. And that's the big key is I've been working with companies for years and I've been able to actually strip out a bunch of stuff of their package and they're actually able to capture more price. Which is weird, right? I'm like, wait a minute, there's less value, but I'm charging more. How does that even work? It works because it's not about more value. It's about the right value directly to what they need. And the closer that connection is, the more they're willing to pay for it because they could see it, they could use it, they could feel it. And that's the big win for any product people listening.
Excellent. All right. We talked about lots of different things. If you were going to have listeners do 2 things differently tomorrow based on what we talked about today, what would it be?
Yeah. Oh, man. More, just 2? You want to give me 2? Yeah.
Plenty of people.
No, I could talk about this. So, listen, I think the first thing, and again, I'm more aligning to folks out there, product people, SaaS products, high growth or trying to grow. I would say these 2 things. Number one is you got to go back and change the way you talk to your customer. Okay. And I'm like, Marcos, that sounds hard. It's not really that hard. I would add just a few extra questions. I even gave you some today to your scripts. You probably have a customer interview coming up next week. Like change the way you talk to them and start capturing how they feel about the value of the product, how well it's delivering, what they find to be premium, what they find to be table stakes, and also different areas that you feel like you can extend and help them more. Those are the biggest things you want to think through in your product. So that to me is sitting down tomorrow, look at your script, and just add 2 or 3 questions to it. That's challenge number 1. Why? Because it's easy to execute. You can do it now. Challenge number 2, or the second thing I would say you would do, and this is not going to be easy for a lot of folks because it depends on your company dynamics, but I will start sitting down with sales and asking them deeper questions about why people buy and why people don't. And the reason why you want to do that, A, because I mentioned that a relationship with sales is important, but B, you might learn a few things that you didn't know before about how sales is selling your product, how what value is resonating and what is not. And I would say it always surprises any PM when they start talking to sales and understanding that. So trying to get a better perspective of why people buy, and then in talking to your customers, getting a little more perspective on what drives their value perception. Those two things you can do tomorrow and start increasing your overall context around value. And then the next steps start to get a little bit clearer.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Marcos, for coming on. If people wanted to go and learn about you or follow you or read your book, where should I send them?
Super simple, right? You can go to pricingio.com, and pricingio.com has a little bit of extra goodies on there, access to my podcast, street pricing, access to my book, access to blogs. Nice. I'd like to give away a bunch of free shit. So spreadsheets and tools and things like that can help you get going. All that, pricingio.com. You can also just follow me, Marcos Rivera, in LinkedIn. I post a lot of free stuff all the time.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcos.
My pleasure.
All right. That does it for today's episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.